And now for the tale of the tape in this heavyweight showdown between the High Elves led by Benedict Cucumber Patch and the Warriors of Chaos, who are going to be led by Prince Sigvald. So over here in Vanguard, we do have three groups of the Illyrian Reaver Archers, which I definitely like quite a bit in this matchup. Well, I mean, pretty much every matchup. But regardless, I like them against Chaos because I feel like they're a relatively good tool against Forsaken. So Forsaken aren't going to be the main core in this matchup. I think you need a little bit more heavy AP in the front line, like Chaos Warriors with great weapons. So you can see my opponent has a couple here, and those type of troops. But still, oftentimes you will see some Forsaken in the back line, or even Chaos Marauders, which are going to be designed to kind of just harass and get around your flanks and maybe just overwhelm your missile pressure. As such, I like the Illyrian Reavers because they give you some missile options, and they're not really vulnerable. I mean, they have 90 speed, they can be caught by Chaos Poison Warhounds, but they can honestly smash Warhounds in melee. These guys have 32 melee attack, 34 melee defense, so they can countercharge Chaos Warhounds and crumble them very quickly. If your opponent goes with Marauders with throwing axes to take out your dragons and other armored troops, these guys are going to be able to shut them down so darn easily. So I really feel like the Illyrian Reavers are pretty much a must pick here, and you can see I'm already getting some decent value against these Forsaken. On top of that, I do have a big, scary Star Dragon. The breath attacks can be pretty good. Sometimes I do see Chaos players go with Chosen and more elite infantry, and even against Chaos Warriors, it can generate some pretty decent value. So we do have the Star Dragon over here. On top of that, we do have Benedict Cucumber Patch, or Teclis, or Doctor Strange. He goes by many names. Nets of Emmertalk, Enfeebling Foe, and Regrowth, all pretty strong abilities. So what I like to do here is kind of have these guys be like a mobile hunting squad. If they have like Archaon or well, not so good against Sigvald, but Archaon or Kolek or any of these large armored, heavy threat entities, you can net them down, Enfeebling Foe, and then really just lay a beating with the two nobles who have solid combat stats, really good armor piercing, and anti-large. So they're going to be doing most of my work here. I have three groups of the White Lions in the front line who will lose the Chaos Warriors with great weapons if I'm not mistaken, but regardless, they do an okay job. And I wanted to just, you can get away with using Spearmen and then just going a little bit wider and getting some other tactical options like Dragon Princes, but I wanted to see how the White Lions would do here, as I've often been pretty disappointed with them in the metagame, but we'll see how they do. In the back, I do have some Swordmasters of Hoeth, and these guys are, if they're not like taking Fatabunos and like heavy pressure like before the fighting starts, and they can get in with that martial mastery and really lay a whipping on their enemies, these guys are pretty darn elite. I mean, 48, 48, and 36, plus a bonus of 14 versus infantry. They're definitely no joke. So that's pretty much it for my army. For my opponent, front line of Chaos Marauders, which most high elf players that I've been running into on ladder, you don't see them use too many of the traditional infantry like the White Lions. They just use like Spearmen. So Marauders are actually a pretty good trade with Spearmen. I mean, it's just going to be atrocious and it's very cheap, and you're actually going to be coming out probably a little bit ahead on cost considering how cheap Marauders are. So he has a front line of those, a couple of Chaos Warriors with great weapons here who are going to be doing the heavy lifting in the infantry fight. He does also have one group of regular Chosen here in the middle, so definitely a cool pick. And honestly, even regular Chosen without the great weapons, they have okay AP values, and they can, with 46 melee attack and 60 melee defense, 120 armor, they're going to be, a threat in most games. You can see my Star Dragon is going to be positioning here to roast them. On top of that, he does have Prince Sigvald, which is pretty good, like for an anti-sniping hero choice. So if you want to play that long game and not try and goon your opponent's lords, he's a decent choice. Although against High Elves, I think that Kolek is probably the best. I mean, 100 armor, he's going to be able to outclass any of their duelists. He can kill the Star Dragon. I really think that Kolek is the optimal pick there. So, Chaos Knights with Lances. He has a Shadowcaster with Enfeebling Foe. It looks like Melkots and the Occam's Mindrazor. And two groups of Forsaken on the flanks, most likely to hunt down my archers, which I don't have. So thankfully, they're not going to be terribly useful this game, I don't think. So without further ado, guys, let's get this show on the road. So right now, just getting some initial value right here. You can see these Forsaken have lost two models and have taken about, almost half their HP and damage from these Illyrian Reavers before the fighting starts. Also, some of these Chosen are going to get roasted here. You can see they're a little bit of a delayed reaction on those shields there, but it looks like they only lose one model in total. Looks like this poor guy right here. Where is he? He's around here somewhere. But anyways, we're able to get some decent damage on those Chosen, which is good. And this is, he left his Chaos Sorcerer a little bit behind, so my Star Dragon's going to come in and just get a ton of free damage. And this is one of the reasons why Star Dragons are so good. If you can just get one decent charge on a caster, you can chase him off the battlefield. Granted, it's probably not worth it to chase him off the battlefield. So on the front line here, he did overextend a little bit with his Exalted Hero because he was riding them with the Chaos Knights. So what I did is I actually used a net on the Chaos Knights, and that allowed me to get a really good counter charge on this Exalted Hero, and he was trying to catch my Illyrian Reavers, obviously. So I get some really good damage, and you can see two anti-large armor-piercing heroes right here, and Benedict, of course, does some okay damage. He's pretty wimpy in melee, but we're able to get some good value and net those guys down, and ultimately, yeah, like especially after that last charge, that was definitely worth it there. So solid net, and also these archers are continuing to fire in, just wasting these Forsaken. So they're down to 52 models, down to 48 now, and definitely just trying to soften them up. So you can see I'm pulling back my infantry corps. So I wanted to get a little bit more value from my Illyrian Reavers before I committed to the main fight, because he had a very overwhelming infantry force, and I am chasing with my dragon still. I wanted to try and shatter him, but I just couldn't, and I was like, okay, I'm going to lose this battle up in the front if I don't have my dragon here, because, aside from that, my core is very weak compared to like his Chosen and Chaos Warriors and Sigvald. and an Exalted Hero and Chaos Knight, so I really, needed to get my Lord back here. So right now is going to be the moment I do commit to the main fight. So in the front, you can see the white lines are going to be colliding here. My opponent gets a charge with the Chaos Knights. Looks like he's going to fall back with those, but the white lines collide, and they'll definitely win there. But the Chaos Knights on the far side are probably just going to monster mash a lot of my troops. Yeah, and I took some pretty substantial shock damage. Well played by my opponent. He's going to be pulling back there. Forsaken coming up and around. He probably wants to get them up and do like a rear charge. I think that would be the more optimal play. But the white lines are getting overwhelmed and, even taking a bit of damage from those Marauders. And you can see the Swordmasters are going to come in, and they are just going to destroy these Forsaken. Swordmasters have very good defensive stats and, of course, have high armor values. You can also see the Nobles coming in, and Benedict is going to be using a regrowth right here. In the meantime, my Illyrian Reavers, and yeah, just doing a really good job on the flanks, just chipping down these Forsaken. And once I'm able to kill off these Forsaken, I can honestly start cycle charging here. You can see another breath attack going down, and I am going to be trying to get a fiery convocation. So it wasn't the best angle. I did have a lot of white lines overextended here, but my opponent, obviously on top of the thing, so he's able to pull back, and it looks like we'll get a partial roast. I think that probably did a little bit more damage to my white lines. I mean, I got Marauders, but is it really worth it? So over here, the Chaos Knights are charging in. He's doing a pretty good job cycle charging, just going after my elite troops here. So I did see it coming and was able to use a regrowth, as you guys saw, casted earlier. But and I also cast an Enfeebling Foe, so definitely some good utility, putting these guys down to 16 melee attack, which is going to make them, pretty wet noodle here on some of these white lions. And also my dragon is going to be putting a pounding on Sigvald. So Star Dragons, I definitely like them here, and if you can protect them from Marauder throwing axes with Illyrian Reaver archers, I feel like it makes them that much stronger. So over here, I'm able to kill off this group of Forsaken, down to 13 models, pretty much useless at this point. Well, yeah, they're just going to break off the battlefield probably. His caster is coming back though, so that was a big advantage I've had so far in the battles, that he didn't have any magic, and I was able to just kind of have impunity in terms of the winds of magic. But here he's going to be coming back, probably dropping, some debuffs on some of my troops, but the bounce power is pretty even, if anything, a little bit in my favor. He does have some Marauders coming back here, just trying to inundate my dragon and tie it down, because I don't really have a lot of troop density, and despite the fact that I've gotten some really good initial engagements, so these white lines are 7 models, completely crumbled. Do I have any other infantry here in the middle? Yeah, these ones are 34, they're pretty much done for. The Swordmasters of Hoth, as expected, performed very well. They pretty much soloed a group of Forsaken and these Chaos Warriors here, so they just did a really good job. My opponent's going to be coming in pretty aggressively with these Chaos Knights, just getting a fat chub charge right here. And Swordmaster of Hoth don't have any sort of charge defense, so they're just going to take the full brunt of this. And it looks like their Martial Mastery is indeed gone, so they're down to 37 melee defense, which for a great weapon unit is still really good. But I have my leadership that's intact. I have my Illyrian Reavers, so I'm just circling into the wagon right here and just kind of shooting at some of these Chaos Warriors, trying to do the best I can. Not fully committing with Benedict and Teclis, because if I do get surrounded here, it's pretty much game over, even, considering I have a dragon. Thankfully, I do have some heroes of the High Elves that are going to be re-engaging here, and my opponent's being really aggressively with these, really aggressive with these Chaos Knights, just riding around. They still are enfeebled, so I was a little bit slow in my reaction, so he did get a couple kills there. But the dragon's going to be landing here, and he's just going to be doing some work on just look at that eye. He's just so angry. Clever girl. So he's going to be engaging on these Chaos Knights, and you can see on his initial impact, he does take out a couple models here. And I will be able to retreat with these Illyrian Reavers before my opponent does catch me here. So Chaos Knights only have 66 speed compared to the 90 of the Illyrian Reaver, so he has pretty much no chance. And as he's chasing me, I'm just using my Nobles and Benedict here, which are honestly such a solid anti-large troop just to take these guys out. So I do get a net of Amnitalk. I really wanted to finish them off because this group has just been doing so much damage to me. So you can see my Illyrian Reavers shooting in, just kind of surrounding them, and they're going to be charging some infantry right now. Meanwhile, the Nobles and Teclis will be taking these guys out pretty easily. It looks like they're down to 12 models and are broken. So I have the dragon. This was actually a really good situation. So I knew I had one fiery convocation. You could see the Phoenix rising up. Oh, that's so cool looking. Too bad it's not like a better ability. But I honestly still think it's worth bringing because there can be times when it's really going to win you the game. But I land my dragon. I knew my opponent would commit everything. He had a big infantry blob, and I used the fiery convocation. But right here, he actually does see it coming, but I still get a massive roast right there. Obviously, it's not going to do a whole lot against my dragon, so I'm able to net some pretty good value. I think it did good work against the Marauders and some of the more low-tier troops here. So the dragon's still putting up a good fight, but it is taking a bit of damage from Sigvald, down to 42 leadership. You can see its HP is kind of tanking a little bit. But my Illyrian Reavers are shooting in, and I'm just kind of using my cav to encircle my opponent. I'm going to try and get rid of his caster here with my Illyrian Reavers. The thing about Chaos Casters compared to other factions is you can see he has 90 armor, so my Illyrian Reavers won't have an easy day with him. And my opponent reacts pretty quick. He does see it. He might be able to get to his help over here. So bounce power is still relatively even, but again, this is kind of the turning point of the game. Over here, I was able to get my 2 Nobles and Teclis and take out this Exalted Hero. His Chaos Knights, his really heavy hitting units here, are pretty much taken out of the battlefield. And now he's going to be suffering some leadership issues. So the Chaos Marauders and some of these Chaos Warriors, I started charging in with the Illyrian Reavers just to finish them off, because I knew if their leadership was low and they're already fighting a terrifying unit. This dragon, if I could get a couple pretty good charges with those Illyrian Reaver archers, that would spell doom and probably, you know, substantial leadership issues. The Chosen are doing a pretty good job of putting up a fight, obviously being the elite of the Chaos Warriors. Only 54 kills. I think the Great Weapon variant might have been a bit of a safer choice here, but I understand that, you know, he didn't want to take a lot of missile fire on them, so I guess there's some give and take. So the Swordmasters of Hoth are charging back in. You can see it's the final stand of the Warriors of Chaos, and the High Elves are able to push them back. And yeah, those guys have some really cool attack animations, the Swordmaster of Hoth, and you can see he cleaves that Chosen right there, and they're just being sent flying by these elite High Elf infantry that are rallying in the fourth quarter, led by the mighty Star Dragon, the clever girl, as we shall call it, her, he, or we're not really sure what it is. Maybe someone knows lore. So I do cast Regrowth as well in the Dragon, which is going to seal the deal. That's going to be all she wrote for the Warriors of Chaos. So well played to my opponent. Let's go ahead and take a look at the breakdown and see how things went. So I really liked Teclis. I honestly think that this is probably one of the strongest leadership and hero compositions available to the High Elves. It allows you to isolate and snipe things. It gives you good utility against large. You can honestly send a Noble to deal with a group of Chaos Knights, and they can put a pretty good dent in them. The White Lines did okay. Like, I was actually moderately impressed. I mean, 151. This one group got overwhelmed by like 3 or 4 groups of infantry, but I think it's better than Spearmen, because had I gone Spearmen, his Forsaken would have torn them to shreds. His Chaos Marauders would have been able to probably, you know, take them, if not put a big dent in them. So I think that this build worked out pretty well, and the Swordmasters performed well. Granted, had he brought Lore of Death, it would have been a little bit scarier, but I mean, I guess the same outcome would have came with his. If it was a Deathcaster, I might have pulled back all my forces and really committed the Star Dragon to killing it before I engaged them in the fight, but yeah, it was definitely a very good catch in the beginning, but regardless, my opponent did a pretty good job of getting the Chaos Sorcerer back and getting him re-engaged and getting some pretty good debuffs on my troops. But yeah, I like the build. It was definitely fun. So for my opponent's build, I would recommend Kolek. I would definitely probably get a Deathcaster, because High Elves, you know, are going to benefit from being at full health. So if you can get a Fated Bune on like elite infantry, it's just too much value to pass up. The Exalted Hero, I saw Loremaster of Sotek use him in the best of 5 with Dodd plays, and he was, you know, doing some pretty good work. So maybe as like a threat to just maybe try and get Teclis, or just a support element, it's not a bad choice. I like a couple Marauders. I think changing this Chosen to a Great Weapon unit would have been better. Cut 1 Forsaken. I think you only really need 1 to keep your opponent honest, and get a couple Poison Hounds. Poison Hounds would have been able to surround Teclis, go after my Nobles, and really support those Chaos Knights. I think that would have been pretty good. But yeah, it was still, you know, pretty decent army composition for sure. So very well played to my opponent. A Livid Pile of Dirt, always a great name. I think I played him a couple times. I recognize that name. So well played, man. It was quite a bit of fun. Look forward to running into you again on Ladder, and hopefully you guys enjoyed seeing Doctor Strange in action. So have an excellent night, guys, and take care.